We're incentivizing the traffickers because we're actually delivering the child directly to their front door. So the United States government is paying for the flights and the bus tickets to deliver these children to people who view children as assets. I think that was the hardest thing for me to understand, is how can a human being look at a child as an asset? But they do. They view them as commodities and assets to be put to work. It's why we're seeing in news all across the country of rampant labor trafficking of these children. They're in debt bondage. They have to pay their debts back. And the traffickers are making money. So, cocaine can be sold one time, but a child can be sold over and over again, multiple times a day, week after week, year after year. They're making millions of dollars off of the lives of the children.
So you started seeing things within a couple of weeks of getting on the job. So tell me about some of your attempts to disclose it and what happened.
Right. So in the very beginning, with the first case that we put forward as what we called suspicious sponsor activity, people seemed like they were excited that we brought this information to them. And then we found the next case because we could see what the red flags were. So in that very first case, we identified that this one individual had been a household member at actually 6 addresses, and over a period of time had started accumulating children from different sites. So we now knew, okay, we need to look for people who are sponsoring multiple children. We need to look for people who are sponsoring at the same address. We need to look for, certain things. So we started to become more efficient at finding these cases. And we found another very high-level case in Austin, Texas. And so everybody seemed, in the beginning, as I'm putting these cases forward, and remember, this is in June of 2021. So I started putting all these cases forward. I was talking to law enforcement by July. So we were putting these cases forward. And it seemed like they were going to be doing something about it. But one day, after we identified this big case in Austin, one of the case managers comes running up to me and she says, "Tara, but we're sending another place to Austin." I'm like, "What do you mean? We've already identified that as a bad address where we shouldn't be sending people." And so I went running down to the command center, which is where the executives were, and I said, I need to let you know that we have on a manifest here that this child is going to a place that we've already identified as trafficking. I need to make sure that you understand. And they're like, "Tara, you do understand that we only get sued if we keep kids in care too long. We don't get sued by traffickers." And then she leaned in and she said, "We don't get sued by traffickers. Are we clear?" So at that point, I knew what their position was, is that in the end, it was about meeting the numbers, getting the children moved, and it was speed over safety. And it was a horrifying revelation.
How did you deal with that?
I'm not ashamed to say I cried a lot of tears, along with case managers. When case managers realized that their kid was being sent somewhere that they had recommended they not go, it's a very traumatic thing. I've never been that close to darkness. It was very sobering to be looking into the faces of these children. I've heard children scream for their parents. I've looked into the faces of kids who, even as a teen, they've never been to school. They can't read. They can't write. Children who cannot even speak Spanish. So we have some children from Guatemala and they speak a Mayan dialect. So they can't speak Spanish at all. And so they can't speak Spanish and ask for help. They can't ask for help in English. They literally become captives of their sponsors. This was a horrible, horrible time. Yeah.
Okay, well, so what happened next?
So after I realized that They were going to send the kids because their mandate was speed over safety. We did everything in our power to write up as much as we could about every single case. You know, we were educating all of the case managers. We had over 200 case managers working. We said, look, if you get any of these identifiers, let us know. We started teaching the case managers how to write up the cases, so there was documentation left behind. Right now, HHS has documentation in what's called SIRs, Significant Incident Reports, and SASIRs, which is Sexual Assault Significant Incident Reports. Our case managers learned to document. So we kept documenting, we kept sending cases forward, and then when we found the MS-13 related case, that's when things started to go a little bit haywire, because that's something that HHS did not want the general public to find out about. They did not want people to know that there were bad actors, meaning people on the transnational organized crime watch list who were actually sponsoring the children. And so there was a brave whistleblower at DHS, came forward in August. We saw his disclosure. We passed it all around the site. And in 2 weeks, we confirmed that what he blew the whistle on was absolutely true. And we had an MS-13 affiliated sponsor trying to get 2 children, one from our site and one from the Pomona Fairplexes where I was, so my site, and then one from the Fort Bliss emergency intake site in Texas.